Hello there. Thank you for joining us once again from wherever you are. We're coming to you live from our studios here in Kukumlimle. Our digital address GA0992539. Our leading stories this hour. President Akufo-Addo accepts the resignation of Special Prosecutor as the presidency prepares to respond to the issues raised by Martin Amidou in his resignation letter, in which he also accuses the president of political interference. Also coming up, a man shot 3 times in the stomach and his shooter, who also shot himself in the head, are both battling for their lives as police guard them in hospital. We're here from the Ashanti Region Police. We also have more as a new JoyNews series focuses on security in our communities with special attention to hotspots areas. And a COVID-19 study reveals more than 2,000 children in Ghana were infected, with at least 4 of them being killed. We have details of the age range of the children infected. And the pulse is brought to you by Global Communities Dignilu, affordable, safe sanitation. Do join us on DSTV 421, GoTV 144. Remember, we're streaming live also on YouTube and on our social media handles. Your thoughts are welcome, if you may, on 0540109009. My name is Gifty Andopia. This is The Pulse. Please be my guest. You're welcome to the details now. President Akufo-Addo has accepted the resignation of Martin Amidou as the special prosecutor. It is the latest in the fast-evolving story since yesterday. In a letter written to the ex-special prosecutor, Chief of Staff, Akosua Osei-Opare, says the president, in accepting the resignation, has also noted the other matters raised in the said resignation letter and will respond to them in due course. We'll be getting more reaction to this resignation, but first, here is a news desk report on his 2-year assignment as special prosecutor.
On January 11, 2018, President Akufo-Addo announced the appointment of Martin Amidou as Ghana's first special prosecutor. He explained why he settled on the experienced lawyer.
I can also personally vouch for his public spirit, but will also provide him with whatever assistance is required to enable him to discharge his high duties effectively.
Mr. Amidou had gained the tag Citizen Vigilante for his relentless push to retrieve some 51.2 million cedis for the state from businessman Alfred Woyome. Mr. Martin Amidou appeared before Parliament's vetting committee as his name was submitted for approval. He told the committee he was committed to protecting the public purse.
You will not allow anybody to do anything that is contrary to maintaining the ideals and values of the Constitution, which we fought to bring in force. The only way we can do that is to protect the national purse.
He got the approval and he was sworn in as the special prosecutor. Soon after taking office, the SP made the news on many occasions as he demanded resources to work.
We have set up an office. We have to organize that office, have the requisite personnel. My law says that 90 days after the assumption of office of the special prosecutor, pursuant legislation must be enacted. As we speak today, I have no legislation. So I use my common sense.
He was, however, criticized for failing to deliver in terms of prosecuting the corrupt in society. And he fought back.
I will leave the job because I am not serving those who are telling me to leave the job. I am serving Ghanaians. That is why I'm always telling Ghanaians that these are the reasons why we are not achieving what we want to achieve.
He dragged the Boko Central MP, Mahama Yaraga, to the High Court for possible corruption, but this stalled for months as a case challenging his eligibility remained pending at the Supreme Court. The Apex Court affirmed his eligibility, but his probe of an allegation involving presidential staffer Charles Bisiu brought him into conflict with some key actors of government. He said the police had commenced investigations into the case, even though they knew he was handling it. But what could well be described as the straw that broke the camel's back was the reaction to the JAPAC corruption risk assessment. The agreement seeking to leverage Ghana's mineral royalties was assessed by the SP. He concluded that there was possible bid rigging to favor Databank, a company with ties to the finance minister Ken Oforiatta, and Africa Legal Associates, which has a relative of the president, Gabi Asaro-Chidako, as senior partner. Mr. Amidou says the president met him on 2 occasions. Mr. Amidou says this meant he could not continue to work without partisan interference, hence his decision to resign.
And Arba Kumsin and Winston Amwa have done extensive work bringing you an understanding of what is at stake and what is contained in this statement that the government has now, or the letter accepting Martin Amidou's resignation. I'll just take you through it once again, if in case you're just joining us. Take a look at this. Now, this is the letter with the letterhead Office of the President, and of course it has been authenticated. It says it's a response, if you like, to the resignation of appointment as special prosecutor. It reads, this is to acknowledge receipt of your letter dated 16th November 2020. It gives you the reference number, and it says it is addressed to the President of the Republic, conveying to him your decision to resign as special prosecutor, which he has accepted. The President has taken due note of other matters raised in your letter, and the government will issue a statement responding to them in due course. Now, the President has directed me, that's the Chief of Staff, to ensure that all emolument and benefits due you under law are paid to you accordingly. The President thanks you for your service to the state and wishes you the best in your future endeavors. Of course, it is signed by Akosua Frema Opari, also Opari Chief of Staff there, and it is copied to Martin ABK Amidou Esquire with his number there. Let's get on the telephone line now. I have Bryce Sowu. Bryce Sowu is with the Ghana Integrity Initiative. I'll also be joined by Executive Director of the Institute for Democratic Governance, Dr. Emmanuel Akwete, who has also been speaking about the President's acceptance letter. Let me begin with Dr. Akwete.
Okay, in state office, in the use of public resources, corruption, theft, whatever you call it. So he made his conditions clear in his letter, and the President accepted that. And so in this matter, he's taken a very principled stand. He said, I was doing my work. I'm doing it professionally. I'm the special prosecutor. I've gone through the processes. I've submitted my findings to you. First of all, to invite me to a meeting, was something he didn't take kindly. But he also understood that there could be an interface because this is a matter affecting the government. And the President is head of the government. Was it to ask further questions on the letter he had served him, or some clarity? But he went to that meeting, and then there was the 2 weeks break, and then there comes another meeting, and the President is presenting responses from the finance minister to the issues to him, which he objected to. And he saw that as clear interference because he said he served the letter and the report to him, but he also intended to now investigate. And we all know that before the letter came out or he published it publicly, he had raised issues about the ministry not furnishing him with documents, and which was causing delays. He said it several times. Whether he got it and eventually that led him to publish his report, I'm not too clear. I need to go back to stuff. But at the moment, what we are seeing then is that he's fighting what he considers to be executive interference. It's a case that could be likened to the Auditor General. That says, hey, I'm independent according to the Constitution and the laws under which I'm governed. The question then is, do I come under a board or the President? Or is there a commission, an appointing authority? Or is it Parliament? We need to clarify these issues. So the fight going on is a fight about strengthening the institutions of state and their autonomy, operational autonomy and independence to do their work without anybody politically powerful breathing over their neck or whatever. That is what the fight essentially is about, getting state institutions empowered the way they should. And his case is not an isolated one. I mean, the police say the same thing. Why is the police not acting on many things? They tell you that there is heavy political breathing over their neck and there is some kind of subtle interference, and they leave the cases in protest, you might say. So this is the point at which I think is a fight he started. He's a courageous position to take. We haven't heard a response of the president yet, whether he's going to accept it and move on. As to how he's been treated so far, the kind of office he's been given the huge nature of the cases, corruption cases he's supposed to tackle, the lack of adequate staff, the secondment. So it all shows the lack of independence. His autonomy, has not been secured and operationally guaranteed in any way. He couldn't recruit his own people. And those who came, he also had issues with. So it's a fight over the autonomy of the office to operate, but also its independence from political interference, and particularly what he considered to be a partisan interference. I think these are, for me, the issues. So the advocacy to separate the positions initially was that the Attorney General, who is also Minister of Justice, is a politician, appointed by the president. He's supposed to be the chief legal advisor of the president. And he belongs to a party. He or she belongs to a party. And in most cases, the institutions have problems dealing with political corruption, people in politics by virtue of their political office, and who have done things that they need to be prosecuted or investigated. And the Attorney General, not this particular one alone, Attorney Generals under the Fourth Republic, and within our authoritarian regimes, these matters have always come up, that there is some selective justice. If you belong to the opposition, then they go all out. But if you're a member of government, of the governing party or whichever group it is.
That's Dr. Akwete there speaking earlier. That's before this particular breaking news. But if you're just joining in, the presidency has accepted the resignation of Martin Amidou. We'll be talking to the Ghana Integrity Initiative on this. What does this mean for institutions? You heard Dr. Akwete talk about strengthening institutions. What does it mean for strengthening institutions going forward? And also to find out whether or not people think this would jeopardize the fight against corruption, or it actually breathes new life into it. Elton Broby is our presidential affairs correspondent. He's joining us now on Zoom. Remember, he'd spoken extensively with Araba and Winston earlier on phone. Let's get to Elton right now on Zoom and get more of the reactions he's getting and what is happening on the corridors of power. Elton, it's good to have you once again.
Yes, good to see you, Gifty.
Right. So, I mean, this story is breaking right this afternoon. Let me just find out from you, between the time you broke the news on radio and on TV and now, what have you been hearing? What is happening?
Okay, so now what we are waiting to hear will be that detailed commentary or response that will come from the presidency on what they've done so far since the establishment of the Office of the Special Prosecutor. So earlier, we brought you that letter from the Chief of Staff addressed to the outgone, if you like, Special Prosecutor Martin Amidou, and then the other one that came from the Director of Communications here at the Jubilee House for the public. The Chief of Staff's own is in response to Martin Amidou's resignation, and it communicates to him government's acceptance of his resignation and the directive for the Chief of Staff to sit down with Mr. Martin Amidou and then ensure that all his emoluments and benefits due him under the law are paid accordingly. And then after some few minutes later, we got that correspondence from the Director of Communications at the Jubilee House, Eugene Ahino, also communicating to the public that government has taken note of the resignation of Mr. Martin Amidou by letter dated Monday, 16 November 2020. President Akufo-Addo has again taken due note of the other matters raised by the Special Prosecutor in his letter of resignation, and the presidency, we are told, will issue a detailed response shortly, and then a directive again to the Chief of Staff to resolve all outstanding matters upon the resignation. So, these are the two letters. So, what is outstanding now is that detailed response that we are waiting to hear, and I can. I have an idea, some of them that we are likely to hear from the presidency, and already there is a leaked confidential memo that captures everything that was discussed in August. It rolled into September, and it gives you an idea of the kind of discussions that went on between Mr. Martin Amidou, the Chief of Staff, and the Director here at the Jubilee House, the Chief Director here at the Jubilee House. And the memo, the confidential memo, relates to concerns that had been raised by Mr. Martin Amidou, and first had to do with a building that was allocated the Office of the Special Prosecutor. And this is a get fund property, a 9-story building, because Martin Amidou had earlier complained about the fact that the 3-bedroom apartment he was given to serve as office was inadequate. And for that reason, he needed a more befitting structure to accommodate the Office of the Special Prosecutor to ensure that its operations are done in a manner befitting of such an establishment. So there's been several meetings. There have been several meetings, and some of them I can give you the points if we have time to go through some of them.
Elton, I'll just jump in here briefly. I want us to go through them, and I actually want us to pull up Mr. Amidou's letter, because the presidency has indicated that they will be responding to the issues he raised in that letter. So I want us to pull that up and look at it. But hang on for me briefly. Let me bring in Mr. Bryce Sowu, who is with the Ghana Integrity Initiative. Mr. Sowu, thank you for your time this afternoon. Quickly, your reaction to what has just happened. Hello, Mr. Sowu, do you hear me?
Hello?
Yes, sir. Do you hear me?
Yes, you are clear now. Good afternoon.
Great. Good afternoon. So I was asking for your reaction to the president's acceptance of Mr. Amidou's resignation.
Hello?
Yes, sir. Do you hear me? I hear you loud and clear.
I'm afraid I couldn't hear you.
Okay, let's try this again. So we're just getting correspondence from the presidency that the president has accepted Martin Amidou's resignation. I want to find out your initial reaction when you heard this story.
Oh, well, I'm pretty sure in most cases when somebody chooses to resign, it's very rare cases that you find the employer say, I do not accept the resignation. That often becomes an issue then of negotiation, which pretty much says whatever the reasons are why you want to leave, I want to go to address those particular reasons. It's not happening in this case. The president has accepted the resignation. I think for most people, that's what we thought would happen after he attended in his resignation. You look at the issues he's raised, those that have come out, that's now known to the entire public. I don't think there's any sort of coming back from there between Mr. Amidou and the president. So I'm not surprised that the resignation has been accepted.
Okay. Now, one key question that has come up since this story broke, since Mr. Amidou actually resigned yesterday, was that a lot of people said, well, this is going to jeopardize our fight against corruption. A lot of people said, well, this is sad news. But some other people have also argued that this actually shows that there are still people of, so to speak, quote and unquote, integrity in the system. And that this actually breathes fresh life into the fight against corruption, that it gives people who have hitherto given up and felt hopeless, that there is actually some hope in fighting corruption in Ghana.
Well, the hopeless people feel that way is the reason, for his resignation.
I'm losing you, Mr. Sowu. I'm losing you. So what you just said wasn't very clear. Can you repeat that for me?
Okay, I was saying the issue of hopelessness comes from the reasons given for his resignation. The fact that his relationship with the presidency, he feels the work that he has to do, he does not have confidence, he does not trust that the highest office in the land supports the independence of his work anymore. And I'm pretty sure that's where a sense of hopelessness is coming from, that if indeed this is the signal we are getting, that the presidency itself does not seem to be pretty straightforward with the anti-corruption fight, does not seem very committed to the anti-corruption fight, then what hope is there? It's because of the power that the executive hold. Mostly, you can talk about the independent anti-corruption institutions all you want, but that's in most cases quite a theoretical arrangement. The practical side of it is that if you don't have that support from a government that's really willing to fight corruption, you can do all the risk assessments you want, you can issue all the reports you want. The people who have to take remedial measures when these things come out, if they are not committed to that particular process, then your work on process is...
It's been terrible having a sustained and smooth line with you, Mr. So we'll try and raise you back on the line if you hear me, so we can have more of this conversation. Elton is still here on Zoom, joining us live from the Jubilee House right now. Elton, so if you take the letter that Martin Amidou wrote, his letter of resignation, there are a few key issues that he raised. Let's start with first of all, he talks about the presidency taking steps to appoint a replacement. So essentially, he informs the presidency that so-and-so is happening and I'm resigning. But then he says, following your steps to appoint a replacement. I'm sure that this is something that the statement will address. You indicated earlier that there has been a meeting by the board earlier today.
Yes, exactly. And the information we had earlier was that the board was not informed of the resignation. So the board chair, Mrs. Linda Ofori-Kwafo, had a meeting with members of the board, and I want to believe that the outcome of the board's decision probably was part of the reasons the government eventually came up with the statement accepting the resignation. I'm told that there's been some recommendations that have been made by the board, and we've been told that it may be part of what may be contained in that detailed response that the government will come up with in the next few minutes, as we have been told. The board, as we were told, was not informed of the decision. They only also got to know of it through the media. And that's how come they met this morning to deliberate on the resignation and some of the issues raised by the special prosecutor in the resignation letter.
Another point that he raises is that there wasn't independence and freedom for him to operate in his office. He actually accuses the president of usurping his functions, and he talks about interference. And to that effect, he says here that it does become abundantly clear to me that I cannot continue under your government as a special prosecutor because of all these issues that he has raised, which certainly should expect some response from there as well.
Of course. I mean, these are matters that we expect the presidency, and for that matter, the president to respond to, because some of them, ropes the president indirectly as far as the independence and then claims of, undue influence that Mr. Amidou talked about. These are matters that are quite serious, and I'm told that these are matters that will be addressed by the president. Remember that when Mr. Martin Amidou brought out his report on the corruption risk assessment done on the Japan deal, he raised issues with the finance ministry and some misconduct on the part of the deputy finance minister, whom he accused of signing or committing the country into an agreement, but he had no such powers to do so. And then the subsequent response from the president, together with the confidential memo that the finance minister responded to when the president gave him a copy of Mr. Martin Amidou's conclusion on the Japan royalties deal corruption assessment raised. There's a part which says that the president wanted Mr. Martin Amidou to have a look at the finance minister's response. Mr. Martin Amidou, in a subsequent, comments on the matter, said that he rejected that particular input from the president. Now, what I've been told by some people close to the president was that cannot be said to be trying to influence the office of the special prosecutor, but because Mr. Martin Amidou had mentioned the finance minister in his own conclusion, and the president had caused the finance minister to respond directly to the matters raised by the special prosecutor, the president just wanted him to have a copy of the finance minister's response. And indeed, even before the finance minister's response was given to the OSP, in which he rejected anyway, the government decided that they will make that particular matter public. So that's, in no way, should suggest trying to invade into the independence of the special prosecutor. But matters relating to office accommodation, salaries, and other matters, what we've been told is that government, according to the presidency, were forthright with Mr. Martin. I mean, it remains to be seen what exactly was done and whether or not these were matters that were accepted by Mr. Martin Amidou, because Mr. Martin Amidou himself raised issues about being handed a bunch of keys to an office complex, and he thought the mode in which the keys were delivered to him was disrespectful and unprofessional, and that was the reason he rejected those keys. The chief of staff responded, explaining the rationale behind getting Mr. Martin Amidou the keys. There's been issues about salaries, there's been issues about some repairs and some due diligence, and I mean, it's very interesting the kind of things one is hearing here at the presidency, even including a television sets, some television sets that were bought for the office of the special prosecutor. And my information is that the feedback they got was that the OSP didn't trust the source, and he was quite unhappy that he didn't go to procure the television set because he had issues about somebody maybe listening to it, maybe a listening device.
Yeah, so he has concerns about bugging, etc. Right.
And then we wait and hear that detailed response that probably will come from the presidency, explaining what government did and so doing since the establishment of the office.
Elton, very detailed one you've given to us there. Let me leave you to catch your breath. I mean, you've been on this for quite a while. We'll be expecting to hear back from the presidency, and I'm sure that we'll be able to come back to you when there's any new development. Elton Brope is our presidential affairs correspondent. He joined me all the way from the Jubilee House with some more details on what's been happening there between when the presidency accepted Mr. Amidou's resignation and now. I had Mr. Sowu on the line. I think I have lost him. We'll try and raise him as and when we can. But lawyer and former member of parliament for Zebila, John Indebugri, has described the resignation of Mr. Amidou as one that was to be expected. He is one of the very first individuals, Mr. Indebugri, to predict Mr. Amidou's resignation soon after his appointment. He's been explaining his rationale behind that prediction. Mr. Indebugri says the Special Prosecutor's Office was just like any other company in which the CEO reports to the board, a circumstance he believes does not insulate the Special Prosecutor against any form of interference. Mr. Indebugri has been speaking on PM Express.
The law specifically says that the Special Prosecutor will prosecute cases subject to the mandate of the Attorney General. It is in the law. Secondly, the architecture I talked about, if you look at the law closely, you realize that it is like establishing a company. The Office of Special Prosecutor was established like a company.
That's Mr. Indebugri there. You hear his concerns also about Mr. Amidou's security from now on. But let me engage Mr. Sowu, who has joined us back on the line. Mr. Sowu, I lost you. Apologies for that inconsistency with the line there, but thank you once again for your time. I've been talking to my colleague, Elton Brope, about the issues that Martin Amidou raised in his resignation letter, which we are told by the presidency will be getting some responses to. But some of the issues he raised bother on getting a replacement for him, independence and freedom that made it difficult for him to do his work. And then, if you like, the last straw, the Ejapa deal. I want to take your thoughts on these. Let's start with the steps to appoint a replacement for him. Looking at the way his office was created, the way it started, with all the issues that Mr. Amidou raised before he resigned, what do you think it means for this particular institution going forward?
Referring to what it means for his replacement?
Yes.
Well, I think the very last issue, the Japan deal and that particular context will speak a lot to whoever has to move next into that office but under this administration. There are some cases that you can pursue. The office pursues that investigation, moves on to try to do a prosecution. You saw that example in the Mahama Yarga case, for instance. And so that follows a certain line all the way to getting some resolution. Then there are cases like this, like the Japan deal, where essentially what it's doing is a corruption risk assessment. I'm looking at the entire process and say, this is where things probably didn't look very straight. This is where there's some suspicion here. I'm red flagging this particular procedure. And in those sort of scenarios, he submitted a report to the president, who then has to act, because some remedial measures expected when you submit a report like that. And in this particular case, we see a situation where he feels there is some hesitance to act on the report. We see a situation where he feels the presidency is not happy with the report and wants a particular narrative. And as an independent office and moving from the facts and evidence he has, this is the only report he could offer. So if he does not trust the highest office in the land that they can give the sort of support and effect to the report that comes from the office, it's something anybody who else is moving to that office who has some genuine heart to actually do the work and do it on behalf of the people of Ghana, not for any particular president, not for any particular government, will take a long, hard look and say, well, for the sort of work where I need to send reports to the president to act or reports to the executive to act, do I have the confidence that they will actually act on that particular report and take the cases to a more logical conclusion? So this is something to take a very long, hard look at. And that's where, when you raise the issue of hopelessness, this is the ramifications of what has gone on. That, for instance, people coming to the office will say, do I have the support to go to make that particular office work? Do not forget that anybody who takes an appointment wants to succeed. It's also a career situation. So you take a long, hard look at where you are going and say, will I be successful in this particular endeavor? If it does not look like that, and looks like the forces that might not be able to support you are quite overwhelming, and the second part of the president is a pretty overwhelming force. I don't think it's going to attract a lot of people to go to take that particular position.
So issues about how attractive this particular position is in the first place, looking at a replacement for Mr. Amidou going forward. But before we go, we wrap up, Mr. So the point about the independence and the freedom to work, what are your expectations in terms of how the government responds to this? They've told us that they will be responding to this shortly, the issues that Mr. Amidou raised. And key among that is independence and freedom, which he said he didn't have. What are your expectations from the presidency?
I think the government's response, we are anticipating and waiting for it to be very interesting. The thing with Mr. Amidou is that throughout his term in office, he's not shied away from the issue. Whatever the case has been, he's presented it to the public, and said things as where it's been pretty straightforward. We may not like the fact that we didn't get a lot of results during his tenure, but one of the things he's done is, at least in everything, he's giving reasons for it. And so again, you are not looking at the resignation where the president says, well, I've resigned for personal reasons, without explaining what those personal reasons are, as is often the norm when these sort of resignations have been. In this case, he's been very specific what the issues were disturbing and what led to the resignation. And you can take Amidou on for all you want, but we've not known him to be a dishonest person. I think, at least from his perspective, what he feels the issues are and situations where he thinks it becomes, when he thinks it's untenable for him, that's where he's resigned. So it's very, very interesting how the presidency responds to the issues that he has raised, because I think there's been a line that a lot of people have sort of suspected for a while. So that's the particular response that we are waiting to see. But I guess at this point we still need to give the benefit of the doubt that we're still hearing the story from one particular perspective.
And the Ejapa deal finally is what has what seemed to have brought us here, if you want to put it in that context. Again, your expectation going forward. President Akufo-Addo, of course, has sent this back to Parliament. Over there, they were back and forth as well. And the Parliament has risen. That will be the next Parliament. What do you expect will happen with the Ejapa deal going forward?
The direction to Parliament never starts well with me. I must be honest with you.
Okay.
Because for me, this was a deal that was put together by the Secretary, not by Parliament. The deal has already gone to Parliament as a reviewer of a sort. We did not have a bipartisan Parliament pass it, but nevertheless, Parliament has passed it by the required numbers, they need to vote to do that. And so if we, after this process, we find a corruption risk assessment and issues have been picked up, I expect that the executive who put together the deal should be the ones acting on it. I expect the president to show leadership in that particular sense. This bit of directing Parliament to look at it again seems a bit like misdirection, a bit of shifting that responsibility to me. I think this is something that the issues raised there should be the executive, it should be the president taking leadership and acting on those issues. They can choose to accept or some of them, he can choose to basically decide not to work with the report. But he should have taken responsibility for this, and he should have stayed with the executive on what the remedial measures should be. The whole point of sending to Parliament, for me, I really do not see the point to make that, because we already see them review it and say it was okay in the first place before the assessment. It has not raised a lot of confidence in terms of what to come out after this. I think this is a bit
of checking the responsibility of dealing effectively with the issues raised in the corruption risk assessment.
Very well. Thank you so much for your time this afternoon. Bright Sowu is with the Ghana Anti-Corruption Coalition there, and he says we're all interested in the response that will come from the government on the issues that Martin Amidou has raised, especially on the Ejapa deal, especially also on the independence and freedom which the man said he didn't have. Well, Mr. Amidou's resignation has sent tongues wagging on the streets. While many expressed surprise about the developments, the one thing that kept coming up was concerns that he wasn't allowed to execute his responsibilities in a free and transparent manner. Listen.
Let's go. So here we are. What's your name?
My name is Christian Nyako.
Right. Have you heard that the special prosecutor has resigned?
Yes, I've heard that. I've heard he's resigned.
And what are your thoughts? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, it's quite amazing, you know. I can't really understand, and the reason he even gave out that for some months or for some years he has not been paid, and you know, it's quite, you know, I can't understand. I can't really understand why such all of a sudden getting to election you just come out to say that you have resigned with that shoddy excuse. Ghanaians, you are not fools. Maybe something is actually happening that makes me, or somebody has instructed him, or maybe something fishy, so he just want to resign so that we can just overlook it. But aside that, there's no reason for what he had.
You think there's something fishy going on? He says those working with him were being bribed, and that, you know, people in government are not allowing him to do his work.
And that is what is happening. You know, people are thinking that this NPP government, I don't want to, political what is happening, but people are saying this NPP government are influencing. They have an influence over it. They're not allowing him to do what he wants to do. And, if we're in power, the reason I was saying that I can't really understand what is happening is that, he is saying people are not allowing him to do what he's supposed to do. So that means that there's no need for him to be in that office. He's not willingly doing what he's supposed to do. So, you can't just put somebody over there and then be controlling the person. So that is why, I don't understand what is happening in.
So for you, it makes sense that he has resigned?
It doesn't make sense to me in a way, and it makes sense to me in a way. It's two things. Either one, he and the party or whoever is influencing him has come together to take that decision he has taken, or he thinks that people are influencing him, are pressuring him for what he wanted to do that they are not permitting him to do. So I think it makes sense. It doesn't make sense to me in two ways. So
thank you very much for sharing your thoughts with us this morning. Ebusia, morning. What I want to say?
I don't really understand.
What are you saying?
My name is Joe.
Your name is?
Joe.
Joe.
Yes.
Joe, have you heard that the special prosecutor, Martin Amidou, has resigned?
Yes.
What are your thoughts? What do you saying? What do you think?
Oh, it's two things. Like my brother was saying, that maybe somebody is influencing him to resign, or the pressure on him for the work is too much.
What do you think? From what you've seen in these last 3 years, what do you think?
Oh, I think like he cannot do the job. That is why he resigned. That is my opinion.
As for watching the Pulse with me, Gifty and up here, and it's all about the resignation of Martin Amidou, the special prosecutor. The presidency has taken note of his resignation letter and actually accepted it. We're waiting for response to the issues that he raises in his resignation letter. We'll be right back with more. When we come back, we're talking about COVID-19 and about security ahead of election 2020. Welcome back to the show, and many thanks for staying with us. Right now, I'm going to tell you about COVID-19 and about children. Now, 2,180 children have contracted COVID-19 since the country first recorded its first case in March. That's according to a report by Child Rights Advocacy Group. Now, Child Rights International is what I'm talking about. The report further reveals that more girls have contracted the virus as compared to boys. However, more boys have died from the virus than girls. We'll be hearing from Executive Director of Child Rights International, Bright Apia, who earlier today at a press conference urged government to intensify its campaign so children understand the importance of observing COVID-19 safety protocols. But first, let's show you excerpts of that particular research. I'm going to just quickly take you through these slides that we have from Child Rights International. Okay, so here it is, 2,180 children, as you've seen, we rightly mentioned, have contracted COVID between 11th of March and 9th of November. And 1,161 out of that 2,180 are girls, and that accounts for 53.3%. Well, you could say that that's because there are more girls in Ghana than there are boys, but we'll get Bright up here to help us understand what that statistic is pointing towards. And 1,019 of that number are boys, and that accounts for 46.7%. Let's go to the next slide. Take a look at what it says. Now, majority of the children infected fall within the ages of 0 to 14. 14 between 15 and 17 contracted the virus. So people between 15 and 17 contracted the virus. I think I need a little bit of clearance there. I'll get to Bright to give me that. But the next point is that 4 children have died from COVID-19. 3 of them, like we indicated earlier, boys. And 8 of every 10 children interviewed preferred to be in school rather than to be at home. We'll talk about that also shortly. Let's take a look at the final slide that says only 5% of children in the regions have access to digital platforms. That's when it comes to getting themselves educated in the times of COVID. And 2 out of every 5 children have experienced some physical abuse and maltreatment. About 5% of these children have also experienced maltreatment once or twice a day. Bright Apia is joining me right now via Zoom, and we'll engage him more on these statistics. Bright, it's good to have you. It's been a while. I trust you're doing well.
Yes, I'm doing very well.
Okay, so
I hope you're also doing well.
I am blessed. So looking at these statistics, first of all, let me start from the population that you dealt with, the population from which we got this sample. Then we can narrow it down to COVID.
Yeah, for the primary data, we surveyed 589 community cities and towns, which we dealt with about over 4,000 people, including children, parents, and yes, both parents and children. So on the basis of that, we got the primary data that we did the extrapolation and all. But from the COVID one, we got the data directly from Ghana Health Service in all the facilities that deal with COVID. Okay. And these are the outcomes that we got as a result of that. So if you look at the approach that we used, we collected primary data, and then we also got data from Ghana Health Service. And then we also looked at other work that has been done by people from other jurisdictions, especially those who populated the contraction of COVID to be able to do our work. So these are the 3 areas that we used to come up with a report.
So in just very brief and maybe one line, tell me how this 2,180 number of children who contracted COVID-19 compare to the other countries. How does it compare? Does it make us better off?
Well, in terms of for the contraction rate, I think we are one of the lowest in all over the world. Yeah. And that also depends on the kind of population that they have. Because if you pick France, you pick UK, US, and even India, you realize that our figure is very, very low. And even within the sub-region of Africa or West Africa, ours is very, very low. And I think that it's a good sign, but you'd also tell us that we need to do more to be able to protect children. And even if you look at those who died, I think that if you are to do a relative comparison, I think we are better off. Okay,
but well, at least 4 children have died. I don't know what that means. What that means, but you also realize that children were, maltreated. Some of the children were maltreated, and that's because they were at home. And so most of them, according to your research, they would rather be at school than be at home. And that's why I believe in your conclusion, you're calling on government to do more. Let's go through the expectations that you have of government on the back of these statistics.
Yeah, well, we did to establish the incidence of COVID among children, and then looking at the contraction rates, we thought that something else must be done to be able to come to a certain conclusion. That is why we also look at the state of children at home. So clearly, based on the report, you realize that most of the students do have trust in our school system as compared to the home. So they feel that staying at home will not be the appropriate or a safer place for them, but they feel that going back to school will solve their problem. So clearly, most of them are demanding that they go back to school. That is why we are saying that it is important for us to look at the outcome of the data from the clinical point of view to be able to determine two things. First, to know whether children are potential transmitters of the COVID among their age cohort, and then also whether they are a threat to the vulnerable groups. If you are able to determine that, then the option for us to do, if children can carry the large volume of the virus, for that matter, it is easy for them to transmit it, then a decision of making the home a learning center should kick in. Or if they carry the low and they cannot transmit it, then government must begin to look at how to open schools in a manner that students will observe the protocol. So these are the things that are coming up. And students staying at home, based on the report, I think that it is causing more harm to them than we thought. And we also felt that though government is doing much, the corporate environment has also neglected its responsibility. Because if you look at one of the outcomes, you realize that about 6 out of 10 children say that they spend more than 6 hours at home without any supervision, which means that their parents are not present and not a guardian even present to take care of them. So you can imagine if children are spending 6 hours a day at home without any supervision, you can imagine what they can do within that period. So a call for a very comprehensive system that, for me, the state, not government alone, but the state must also be interested in doing things in a manner that would ensure that we don't make children more vulnerable.
Bright, I'll say a very big thanks. This looks like it needs a whole panel of discussions to be able to, to reach out to all these stakeholders. Very important issue. Bright, thank you for this survey. Bright Apia there, who is with Childwise International. They've done some very good research there indicating that children want to go back to school. Perhaps we need to put in those measures for them to do so, because he says it's causing more harm than good having them stay at home. Welcome back. Many thanks for staying with us here on The Pulse. Now, it is World Anti-Microbial Resistance Awareness Week. That's a mouthful, I know. We'll break it down. Well, the Pharmaceutical Society of Ghana wants to celebrate by creating awareness to the general public on antimicrobial resistance and its impact on society. I have here in studio Dr. Isaac Boabe-Nyantichi. He's a project coordinator, YPG, also director of pharmacy. You're welcome, Doc.
Thank you. I
also have here in studio Rebecca Kofi Wallace, General Secretary of YPG, also a pharmacist. You're welcome, lady and gentlemen.
Thank you.
Okay, so let's try and break it down. What's this whole microbial in English? How would you break it down for the understanding of those of us who did English?
It's anti-microbial. So
microbial. So I didn't get that word right.
Yeah, so when we say microbes, we all know microbes to be little tiny germs that when it gets to the human body, we need to fight against it. So we use antibiotics and antimicrobials to cater for these germs. So because we keep on using antibiotics, some of these germs find a way to tackle it. And that is why we celebrate this Antimicrobial Awareness Week, so that people will be aware of it, that right now we ourselves are creating super bags because of how we are using it.
Okay. So if I can break that down in the English that I understand, which I believe perhaps my mother will understand, that our system our bodies get used to some of the bacteria. Is that correct? Yes. And so we build that level of resistance. Exactly. So you're creating this awareness so that people will know that you can build resistance to these antibiotics.
Sure.
So that you want to help me with that, Rebecca?
Yeah, of course. The resistance is actually with the microbes. They actually develop resistance to the antimicrobials.
Okay.
Because they're not really us developing the resistance. It is the microbes that develop resistance to the microbials, antimicrobials, sorry.
Okay. So can you give me a practical example of all this plenty English that we've just spoken?
Okay. Let me just put it in this way. Let's say we have a fight. And then I
I understand that bit. I mean a typical example with, say, the way we take
Okay, sure.
Yeah.
So we all know antibiotics to be the red and yellow thing, or sometimes it comes in a capsule form with different colors.
Yeah.
So when we take antibiotics in the wrong way, and then for a wrong indication, that is what brings about. So let's say you go to a doctor, we give you for a week, but you take it for 5 days, and then you stop. And the 3 days, you are actually causing resistance. Sometimes too, I took this medicine, my sister is sick, I take the same medicine, probably could be a different disease or infection. So we not anything that you need to take antibiotics for. Also, some of our grandmothers put these capsules into their injuries, which is not the. It's
is it wrong? But it heals the wound. It heals the wound. It heals the wound quickly.
But that's not the intended.
I think my mother has put that in my wound before when I was a child.
Well,
no.
And it healed it instantly.
So these are some of the things that
you're creating awareness about.
Yeah.
Okay, that's like a lot of work to be done. Yes. And I hope that the way you've broken it down goes down well. I just want to come to you again, Rebecca, about how you... With this Awareness Creation Week, is there, say, like a program lined up to be able to send this message across? Because, again, not everybody watches TV. And those who watch, not everybody even watches English-speaking TV. Is there a plan to break this down further for people, everybody else to understand?
Okay, thank you. So, yes, there are multiple programs like this that will be going on, which we've already started. I think this morning we were just on Asase FM, trying to reach out to Tree-speaking people who really don't get what we just said, I mean, in the big terms. Right, yeah. Also, I mean, now, internet. I think everyone has a phone now that has access to internet. So we, as young pharmacists, really, we are putting together pictures, some skits here and there, a few animations to send our messages across through Twitter, Instagram. I mean, all of that. These days, you know, everyone has access to these things.
Okay. So is there anything else anywhere else where people can get information without necessarily those who can?
We have our Instagram page. We are young pharmacists, and we have an Instagram page, YPGPSGH.
Okay.
When you go to our Instagram page, you have all the things about antibiotics there. This year we are celebrating it under the theme United to Preserve Antibiotics. So you have a lot of pictorial illustration on what we want to talk about to make it easy to understand.
Okay, so I've been having this great conversation, and it will be available still on YouTube if you missed it or you want to share it with anybody who puts, you know, the caps in the injuries like my mother did. I had Dr. Isaac Boabenyantishi. He is project coordinator with the YPG, also director of pharmacy at Lena Health Service. I also had Rebecca Kofi Wallace, who is General Wallace. Is it Wallace or Wallace?
It's Wallace.
Wallace.
Yes, please.
Yeah. Okay, Wallace. I knew there was something wrong there. General Secretary of the YPG. They say they are available on social media, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. Yes. You can reach out to them if you want to help, you know, spread the message. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you too.
All right. Like I said, this conversation will be available on YouTube, so it will be on demand. You can always go there and take a look. Now, let's talk about security. Some residents in the northern region capital, Tamale, are calling for increased visibility of security personnel in the metropolis and its environs to protect lives and property. The residents say they have either been victims or seen a wide range of violent crimes, including armed robbery and assault. They also lament arms are in the wrong hands, and those people tend to use them at the least provocation. As we draw closer to election 2020, JoyNews is putting the spotlight on security within our communities across the country, and we're seeking answers from those in authority. We begin today in the northern region from where Martina Bugri reports.
The northern region has had its fair share of robberies and violent crimes this year. Areas noted for these crimes include Vitin, Kapa Yilifuo, communities around the School of Hygiene and circulated areas in the metropolis and its environs. Famous among these crimes were the Vitin mobile money robbery, the Kakpayili fuel station robbery, where one person was killed, the robbery of a Forest Bureau operator, and the near rape of an 18-year-old girl whose rescuer was killed.
We used to hardly record what we call armed robbery or serious theft cases. But of late, you even find it very difficult to ride your motor from 9 p.m. and onwards. So these days, if at least the authorities will be able to help curb it, put what we call the Operation Calm Life, so that they will be putting a lot of checkpoints on our roads, it will be able to help us.
There was a tax in Tamale here, especially the filling station, mobile money vendors. Initially, when the issue started, they attacked one filling station around Kakpaayile, near the Chief Palace, and they killed the watchman and took everything from them. The state institutions, they intend to arrange some items like security barriers and the rest in town. So all they said, within some short period, they stopped. Understand? After that, they begin to do, the issue arise again. They start attacking mobile money vendors.
We have to let them to be very alert. You know, Northern Virginia, we don't feel safe at all.
With less than a month to go to the polls, the residents are worried with the already volatile situation, and arms in wrong hands, the region may not be able to handle additional political violence. They are therefore calling for increased security in the area.
We are not at ease because of what is happening currently. Young guys killing people, making their motorbikes, breaking into people's rooms. When it comes to political tensions too, the kind of pronouncements people make at times it scares us. The security, the police, the fire, all the security agencies, they should come together to collaborate.
For the gun aspect, it's all about if you have money, if you come, they will sell for you without registration, without registering it.
Right now, we don't feel safe, and we are heading towards election. There was patrol team in town, but usually what they always does is that the patrol team do only patrol in Tamale Central, around this area. They don't go to the outskirts like Kakpaayile, Sanargu, Kuko, Wodke, and the rest.
The residents say they are afraid to stay out late beyond 10 p.m.
Martina filed that report, and we'll be bringing you more in our subsequent bulletins, and also as we go towards the election and hoping to reach also the minister, the regional minister, on the back of this story. But residents of Ayeduase in the Ashanti regional capital Kumasi are today reeling from the shock of a bizarre daylight shooting incident involving two drivers there. A driver of a Kia saloon vehicle shot himself after shooting a man who warned him against careless driving at the Ayeduase near KNUST. The victim, known now as Amwa, who is a painter, was shot 3 times in the stomach after returning a slap from the driver. The driver shot himself after he was surrounded by the police, who had rushed to the scene to prevent a mob action. Some eyewitnesses have been recounting the harrowing incident to JoyNews.
This is the main Ayeduase to KNUST campus church here in Kumasi. And where I stand presently is few meters away from one of the KNUST exits. They call it the Agrek Gate. And at this point this morning, a driver of a Kia saloon vehicle shot one man for telling him to drive cautiously on the road.
I was just standing with Mr. Amwa. I was discussing some issue with him. So when I saw a guy driving very careless on the road, so we just approached the guy and says, Amwa says, please drive very careful, because this place is just a busy road. You can cause an easy accident. So the guy get up from his car and just slap Amwa. So you know Amwa is also a man, so he just replied the slap. So I just saw the guy just taking a gun from his car, just shot Amwa 3 times, just seriously. So I called someone for some help, so we just take him to a car and just take him to a hospital.
So what did Amwa say to him that made him shoot him?
No, it was just an agreement between him and Amwa that he should drive well, because the way the guy was driving, it wasn't good at all. The way the guy was driving, it wasn't good at all. So I think there's something happened, but that time I was just standing at Amwa's back. So I just saw the guy slapping Amwa. So Amwa just replied the slap to the guy.
And he went back into the car and picked a gun?
Yeah, he was standing with his car in front of the gate. So he just took up the gun and just shot him.
Nanaya Jima with that report. He has been interacting with the police. We'll bring you that in our subsequent bulletin. Now, we know that those 2 people are not dead, thankfully. They are responding to treatment at the Komfanoch Teaching Hospital, but they are also being guarded by the police. There is more news at myjoyonline.com. My name is Gifty Ando Apia. Many thanks for your time.